the old adage, when do you want to put up the plywood? When the hurricane winds are blowing 100 miles an hour, or the day before when you know it's going to blow 100 miles an hour tomorrow, right? And
Hmm.
so I think getting permanent residency somewhere else is like putting the plywood over the windows, right? Or the, the storm shutters, whatever it is. You do it when the sun's shining, because, because we don't know. Like, if all of a sudden, stuff hits the fan.
America is divided because our powerful federal government pits red states against blue. We need to return power to the states and to the people by decentralizing. If that fails, we must be prepared for a peaceful national divorce or face a destructive civil war. Welcome to War, Divorce, or Federalism. America at a Crossroads.
Welcome back to WDF, War, Divorce, or Federalism, America at a Crossroads. I'm your host, Rick Becker. In this episode, we are probing the ultimate contingency plan, planting a second flag overseas while the home front simmers. Our guest, Michael Cobb, left a comfortable career in the computer industry in the 90s to co-found ECI Development, a multi-country developer that now controls thousands of acres across Belize, Nicaragua, Panama, Costa Rica, and is expanding into Portugal, Argentina, Chile, and Ecuador. He is also co-founder of Key International Bank in Belize. So, if America fractures, whether through civil unrest, debt implosion, or outright national divorce, can these Latin American enclaves really keep the lights on and your liberty intact? Or would a robust state-level federalism make fleeing unnecessary? Let's visit Plan B blueprints with Michael Cobb. Michael, welcome.
Hey, good to be here, Rick. Thank you. You brought up a lot of great topics, and I know we're going to wade into them. So we'll have a great conversation today.
Perfect. We were just talking ahead of time here. We've had discussions in the past before about being expats or about having property overseas. And I love how this dovetail into WDF when I talk to people that are concerned about the future of America, or even veterans, retired veterans. They've got bug out plans or plan
Yeah.
Bs. And so I think you're the perfect person to talk to. So
Thank you.
we can jump right in. So we break this podcast down generally into war, divorce, or federalism. The idea is that we are very, very polarized. Things are very, very, there's a lot of unrest, and it deals with, I think, stems from a very strong centralized government, one size fits all, control of people of different ideologies and so forth. And that the only way to resolve that is to have a truer federal system with state sovereignty. And if we can't do that, we have to talk about secession or national divorce, because if we don't talk about those things, we may find ourselves in some sort of civil war. So in these various scenarios, I think a plan B is a great topic. So jumping into a hotter aspect of things, the war end of things. If there was a critical event, electromagnetic pulse, or some sort of rapid civil breakdown. And we saw how that can happen just by not having enough toilet paper on the shelves.
Yeah, right.
And people who have places to go, people who have plan Bs, what is the most concerning item that you believe is reasonable when you're trying to get from point A to point B? Is it going to be a lack of fuel? Is it going to be a breakdown of air travel? Is it the consular services, political services? What do you see there?
Sure. I think, look, let me take kind of one off the table. EMP happens, airplanes aren't flying, cell phones aren't working, right? Cars aren't starting. I mean, that to me is like an apocalyptic kind of event that, some great books written about it. And I don't know, Newt Gingrich wrote the foreword to a book called 1 Minute After. I don't know if you've read that or not.
No.
Yeah. It's a great book. I can't remember the title. Phenomenal read, but that's an EMP. And anyway, so I think for the purposes of this conversation as it relates to overseas, I think we just have to take that one off the table, because there is no getting overseas at that point, right? Right. So I think other types of situations evolve somewhat slowly, right, to very quickly. But in almost in all cases, there's some amount of time in there. And look, I think the whole point of this, Rick, that you're doing a tremendous service to your viewers and listeners, because we're starting to talk about how do you see over the hill, around the bend, right? And so, what are the smoke signals that you can kind of pick up on way early in the process? So, I think a lot of people are just like la 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 la, and oh my gosh, there's no toilet paper in the store anymore, right? But it didn't happen like that. It happened over several days or a week or whatever, right? And so, for the people that are awake and are paying attention, watching stuff like this, reading books, really alert to what the possibilities are, I think the lead up time, the ramp time, will be days to weeks. If it's days, boy, that's then you really got to make your decision quick and act on it, right? And unless there's something that would shut down air travel, right, to be overseas, I think most people who are paying attention would have time to exit the country and get to their Plan B location. And by the way, I think one of the things, you sent me some thoughts ahead of time that we might be talking about, and you talked about Wyoming and Florida and some other places. If your Plan B is domestic, I mean, you still need to be thinking about this. You still need to have your eyes front forward and be looking for the smoke signal to say, hey, there might be fire out there, right? And so whether it's domestic or international, we have to act fairly quickly, and in some circumstances, very quickly. Other circumstances, things can, give us maybe a week or two to kind of prepare and launch. But I think that having a plan B, whether it's domestic or international, is critically important because we don't know what will happen. I like the offshore foreign plan Bs because it adds one more layer of I would say uncertainty in a good way to the equation, right? I think there's if you're in the U.S., you're still in the U.S., right? And so there's a lot of certainty about things like martial law and the National Guard and calling up the troops or whatever it happens to be, right? There's certainty there. If you're in another country, like a lot of that certainty kind of goes away, and then it's uncertain, right? It doesn't mean that something can't happen, but some of those things that could happen domestically, probably can't happen overseas. So I think there's some advantage to that. There's some disadvantage to that, and we can talk about those too. So.
Yeah. In your in the various communities that you are involved with, do you have, well, let me step back. First off, in several of these countries, there is some unreliability with regard to the grid. There's
Sure.
Having no electricity for,
Yeah.
periodically is not terribly unusual. So
Right.
delving into that area, but then expanding it for more significant events that may or may not happen. Are your communities protected from that? Are the communities self-reliant, or do they have backup systems if the local infrastructure is not adequate?
Yeah, great question. In some cases, yes. In other cases, no. Our property, our Grand Pacifica property, we have our own well. We have a lot of the homes have solar. Some of the homes are 100% solar. They're not even tied to the grid. Most people have a backup generator. The critical services like our internet, pumps for the wells, things like that, we have backup generators for. We're in the process of working with a company to come in and do a large solar array for the property that would become a daytime primary. We're not going to put batteries in, but a daytime primary source of power. So those are the kinds of things we have done and will continue to do to build resiliency into the systems. In a place like Ambergris Caye, which is a very highly developed tourist town in Belize, there's really no way to do that. You're really at the mercy of whatever the infrastructure there is, and you're right. In some cases, it can be unreliable from the grid. I actually think the bigger issue is water. And I mean, you can kind of live without electricity and live without internet, although the kids wouldn't say that. But anyway, but water is the critical thing, and water storage is fairly inexpensive. And so we highly advocate water storage for folks because, again, if the electric goes off, who cares? You can live without electric for a long time. Water is a very different thing. So the resiliency is a piece of the puzzle, water being a very important one that we certainly recommend folks pay attention to.
Yeah. When you say water collection, you're talking rainwater?
It could be, or it could be storage, individual homes, like you have a storage tank,
Okay.
in your home or under your home. In Belize, they do a lot of cisterns
Hmm.
there where you actually kind of build a basement, but it's a water storage. You can collect rainwater for sure. You can bring fresh water in as well from a well or from the public system. But having your own water storage when the water goes off is a good thing. Yeah.
The electricity, one of the things I think about is, as you've mentioned, you can get along to a significant degree, at least on a short-term basis. But even for those systems in which they have a good solar powered system, those, like, say, lithium batteries, I think those only last for about 10 years. And so
Right.
I suppose the hope is that over the course of 10 years, we've come back to a state of things in society that you can have infrastructure in place.
Yeah, or we live with electricity 12 hours a day, right? I mean,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah,
just
I
don't have it at
suppose.
night.
Exactly. Well, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things I think too about, not only, I mean, being in an expat community, but just traveling as a reasonable person overseas or to Central America or South America, is just tempering your expectations or altering your expectations of
Yes.
what are the creature comforts. Perhaps having a 24-hour electricity, as much as we take it for granted, isn't something that is necessary.
Right. I think that's true. I mean, obviously, look, in some scenarios, it probably is necessary. Like, you're a physician, so having power at night in a hospital is important, right? The emergency room, people come in all hours of the day and night, right? But I think for most people living just their lives, in that sort of worst case scenario, having electricity in the daytime actually might be a luxury, right? Because a lot of people won't because they haven't planned ahead,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. And again, we're talking about situations, events
Right.
that are occurring that you're getting through, whereas people who are not prepared are going to have a difficult time getting through.
Correct.
Let's talk about assets.
Mhm.
There's so much discussion overall with gold versus crypto. Let's just call it Bitcoin.
Sure.
When you look at one versus the other, versus, say, land,
Yep.
what do you advise people as far as thinking of Plan B? Do you diversify across those? Am I missing one main category? What are your thoughts?
I think there's sort of it to me uses the word diversification. I think that's the right word. I'm a huge fan of diversification. Our company is very diversified across, we own property in 4 countries, we work in 6 countries. And so, we've diversified our business across, several countries because you never know what will happen in any one of those countries, right? And I think the same thing is true with the kinds of assets you mentioned, whether it's metals, crypto, Bitcoin, land. But then I would also put, some level of what I call the basic survival. I mean, how much food do you want to have, handy in case there is a problem, right? I mean, like, so what is your food supply? Is it a week, a month, a year? I don't know. But I think that having those assets, so I'm gonna call them survival assets, trump all the other assets. But then you move into sort of the secondary assets, right? That could allow you to get more food or trade or do whatever. And depending on how bad the circumstance are, look, I don't know that I see things going all the way to war and but that's not to say I don't plan for that. I have a plan B, right? Because I've planned for the worst and I hope for the best. And I'm hopeful that something in between will play out. But if the in between plays out, what that really means is assets like land, food assets, certainly food assets, right, and in the form of commodities, right? So agricultural land specifically, metals and crypto should do very, very well against a deflating or a devaluing dollar, right? I think that sometimes we think about, oh, these things are going to do, the value of gold's gone way up. It's $3,500, but is that really so much more than it was 100 years ago compared to what $3,500 would buy, right? And so maybe a little more, it varies, right? But I think the diversification across metals, Bitcoin, land assets, and then what I'm going to call those survival assets. It could be solar panels. I mean, having some solar panels, right, whether you have them hooked up or not, right? I mean, just having those kinds of things for that immediacy that you might need. So I think that diversification across all of those asset classes, to call them that, is critically important. And the one thing, you might get some boos and some hisses from some of the people in your audience, but I also would never bet against the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy is whatever, a 15, 18 trillion dollar economy, and it's huge, and it's got this flywheel that just has so much momentum. And yes, sand's being thrown in, gravel's being thrown in. Might only chuck a railroad tie in there once in a while, right? But but it chews that stuff up and keeps churning. $18 trillion economy, right? And so I would never bet against it. And so I actually believe that having some of your financial assets, to be very specific, in the markets actually makes sense too, because the U.S. economy is going to continue to be a very robust economy. But then diversifying across those other classes, I think, makes sense too.
I've thought whether it's overseas or whether it's even at home here, I've thought it's either good to have a little plot of land where you can plant some food,
Yep.
or at least be really, really good friends with someone who does. One or the other. You got to have that in play.
Yeah, or Rick, own a piece of land and lease it to a farmer.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
That now everybody wins, right?
Yeah. If you can afford, even if you can buy 1 acre, 1 acre is enough to sustain you and your family if you develop it properly.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. When you have these enclaves, is an enclave an appropriate term?
Yeah, or community. We call them communities. Okay. But yeah, sure.
So one of the things I think about in these countries, there is a significant difference in the standard of living. And yes. As you know, I have some property in Belize, and there are just like in the U.S., there are people that kind of understand how things work, and then there are the people that maybe focus more on envy and resentment. So in some of these countries, they recognize that anyone who comes in is helping the economy and bringing dollars in, whether it's tourism or investment or whatever else it might be. They understand that, and they see what a significant of an advantage it is to have folks come.
Right.
On the other hand, there are others that don't understand that, and they have resentment, and they see these privileged Americans are buying up our land, right? And there's resentment. First off, I guess the first part of the question is, are you seeing any of that? And obviously, we don't want to overemphasize that, but the other part, if things go in such a manner that there is a significant increase in the number of people moving to these communities because of maybe unrest in the United States or any other reason, do you see that sense of resentment or concern about there being two fomenting more unrest?
Really great two questions there. And if it's okay, let me unpack them one at a time. But let me also start with sort of a more general principle that I think is critically important. Folks need to really hear this and understand this. When you go visit another country on vacation, for example, I mean, there's a myth in the American and Canadian mind, which is, well, if stuff hits the fan, I'm gonna leave. And you know what? As a U.S. or Canadian, we can get on an airplane right now, this afternoon, tomorrow morning, and we can fly to 100 countries without a visa and walk to the immigration booth, and they stamp your passport and say, welcome to, Aruba or wherever it is, right? Welcome somewhere, right? But in 90 days or 60 days or 30 days, whatever that tourist visa, because that's what they stamp a tourist visa, right? So in some short period of time, 30, 60, 90 days, you have to leave because you're a tourist, right? And the problem that we've been lulled into thinking just like, I'm going to leave anytime I can leave anytime I want. And that is true. The problem is you can't stay. How do you stay somewhere else? Because if stuff's hitting the fan back here in the U.S. and you want to stay in Belize, for example, you brought that up, right? Well, 30 days later, they're going to say, well, hey, get out of here, buddy. You got a tourist visa. Go home. I don't want to go home. Well, tough crap. Go home, right? I mean, that's what it's going to be. And so getting residency legal residency, not citizenship. That's a whole different thing, right? A lot of people talk about, oh, I'm going to become a citizen of another country. Great, go do it. But that's such a tiny percentage. For what people need in a plan B, what people must have, not they must have as part of a valid plan B, they must have a way to live and stay in another country for as long as they want. And the only legal way to do that is with a residency visa. It can be retirement driven, it can be investor driven, lots of ways to get a permanent residency in another country. But in order for your plan B to really hold water, like otherwise you got a bucket with giant holes in the bottom of just going to leak water. It's not a plan B. To have that solid plan B, you must have a residency in another country. And so this leads into your question. I think that where there's some resentment on the part of people in other countries, not just the Americas, Africa, Asia, other places, right? And in the developing world generally, is this notion of entitlement. Oh, that rich American, that rich Canadian, they're coming here. They're kind of flouting the laws. They stay as long as they want. They don't, they don't have a residency visa. They get their tourist visa stamped. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. They do the border runs. There's lots of ways to kind of play the gray area around that. And that actually does cause some resentment because you've got law-abiding citizens. I mean, look at what we're doing. Look at the U.S. We're saying, hey, if you've came here illegally, we're going to kick you out, right? The resentment in the U.S. is real. Like, hey, we have a legal system to become a resident of our country. If you follow it, you can become a resident of our country. If you don't follow it, we're going to find you and kick you out, right? So there's a big level of resentment in the U.S. over the illegal immigrants. Well, if we don't have a permanent residency in the other country, and we stay, we've become an illegal immigrant in their country, right? And so I think that getting a residency is absolutely mandatory for anybody who wants an international plan B. That has to happen, or you don't have it. And when you have it, you're treated differently in the community. When you have a permanent residency in the community, people know, like, you'll have a cedula, which is like an ID card, right? Or you'll have a driver's license in that country. And so, people will know that, and you're accepted into the community differently when they know that you've quote unquote bought in, right? You haven't just bought the property, but you've become a resident, a legal resident of the country. And when you have buy-in, or they sense the buy-in, the relationships change significantly. And we see that in our communities, but not just in ours, in our neighboring communities, and just generally the expats that we know. The folks that become part of the community legitimately, legally, and socially, they join the Lions Club, they join the Rotary Club, they work in some faith-based organizations, whatever those types of things are. You're working alongside other members of the community. Yeah, there may be some other gringos there too, but at the end of the day, you're working alongside other members of the community, and they become your advocates for so many things. And so the resentment level really, it goes away. You can't take away the resentment from the people you don't know, but you've now built this social network of people who know you, care about you, love you, and respect you because you are integrating into the community. And when you do that, I think that the resentment levels go way down, and you've kind of put a buffer around you that's meaningful in that community.
Let's talk just a little bit more about then obtaining residency and what it means. Yeah. It doesn't mean you're giving up being in the United States on a permanent basis or anything like that. It just means that you have then the access, and that you have a more permanent presence in another country, or the capability of having that. So I have found that in Belize, it's not that difficult, especially, I forget, they have a QRP, qualified retirement persons.
Exactly.
Right? And so you have to show, and it's interesting that we could go on into a different discussion, but the whole idea of immigration and what countries expect. So if you want residency in another country, in Belize, for example, you have to show that you have income, a certain level of income on a monthly basis, because they don't want you coming in if you're going to tax their system further by needing welfare, we'll say. Now, in prepping for this interview, I learned there's something very intriguing on how you can get residency. I think it's in Nicaragua, right? With buying into hardwood. Okay, there you
That's
go.
my
So
Nicaraguan residency. Yes,
yeah, so
exactly.
tell us a little more about that, because I think people think of residency as something that's huge, like you have to pack up your house, go, and so
Yeah.
forth. Let's hear about
Right.
that.
And for US people, right? I can't remember what the equivalent in Canada is called, but for the US, it's a green card. Basically, I have a green card for Nicaragua. This is a residency card. And what that allows me to do is, enter Nicaragua anytime I want and stay for the rest of my life if I choose to, because I'm a legal resident of the country. I'm still a, US citizen, right? I still have my US passport, right? But at the end of the day, I can live in the U.S. because I'm a U.S. citizen, right? I don't need any documentation for that, right? Well, maybe I do, but anyway, that's a different discussion.
Oh,
Anyway, we'll just leave that one off the table.
right.
But I'm a citizen of the U.S. I get to live here because I'm a citizen, but I'm also a resident of Nicaragua, which means I can live there for any period of time indefinitely for the rest of my life, and that is powerful, right? That is incredible peace of mind. Truly, that's peace of mind, because like if stuff hits a fan up here, I can pack up my family, we can go to Nicaragua, and we can stay there for a month, a year. If things get better, we come back. It's like the easy button, it's the flexibility button, but it's truly peace of mind. And so yes, one of the ways to get residency in Nicaragua is through an investment in reforestation. The country was deforested in huge swaths to put in cattle and cotton. Right? They just cut down rainforest and they raised cattle and raised cotton and they want to get a lot of that land back into forest. And so they've put together a reforestation incentive program to encourage people to come and plant trees. And one of the benefits is you can become a resident of Nicaragua by doing that. And I throw out a number. I say it's not that expensive. I mean, it's all perspective, right? It's about $33,000. It's 32 and change. I don't remember what it is, but $33,000. You get teak plantation parcels, and you get a residency in Nicaragua. And it's a 1 acre, so it's an acre of teak. So you own the land, you get title to the land, you own the land, you own the trees, and in 25 years, the trees get harvested. People are like, 25 years, forget the trees, forget the harvest. You got peace of mind. You got peace of mind, right? You own a piece of land, and you got trees that'll be worth a lot of money in 25 years. The process is somewhat painful. I just say that up front. Like it's a little bit of a painful process because it's very bureaucratic. You're going to have a police record, a health record. You're going to have to get original copies of your high school or college diplomas. I mean, like it's not a big deal, but I mean, I've done all that. You have to write away to your college and send them $20, and they send you a diploma. I mean, just on and on and on. So it's that kind of a bureaucratic, but it's very clear. They tell you exactly what you need. If you follow the instructions and get them notarized and apostilled and then you work through the process and you become a resident of Nicaragua, and that gives you the right to live there for as long as you want. And then then you own an acre of land with let me think about the number of trees. You end up with about maybe somewhere between 80 and 100 teak trees on an acre, more or less, at the end of 25 years. Using just simple projections. I know we talk about this, but I mean, simple projections. I mean, that's the $30,000 investment will turn into a little over $300,000 in 25 years. And so, like it's a real investment, right? It's just you have to wait 25 years to collect on it, but whatever, you can give it to your kids, you can give it to your grandkids, whatever you want to do. It's a great investment. It just carries a long investment time frame. But the real benefit is that residency card for the next however long you have it. Hopefully we never need it, Rick. That's the truth. Hopefully
Right.
we never need the residency, and in 25 years you get a big check for $350,000 and like woohoo,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Worse things could happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
My experience to some degree is if I travel overseas or if I'm in Belize, we kind of tend to leave our politics at the door.
Yep.
Do you find the same in your communities, or do there tend to be communities that drift toward, say, red or blue?
That's interesting. Rick, I'm on a lot of podcasts and nobody has ever asked me that question before. And it's a really, really great question. Um, the, no, they don't really drift to red and blue. What I would say is that there's a spirit of adventure. If I had to pick the thread that runs through the people who end up going overseas, expatting, buying property, investing overseas, whatever, living overseas, anything from a vacation property to just simple investment to full out moving, right? There's the thread that weaves all of them together is a real sense of adventure, a spirit of adventure. I would also throw in there, rugged individualism. And so what I find is that if I had to, you've probably seen that chart. We've met at Freedom Fest, right? They have the left, the right, the dictatorship and the freedom. They always put freedom at the top, right?
Right.
Okay. Anyway, you got left, right, dictatorship, like control, 100% control, authoritarian, or liberty or libertarian. And whether you get there from the left or the right, freedom, I think, spirit of adventure, individualism, freedom tends to be maybe the biggest single element. Yes, there's some people on the left, there's some people on the right. I don't know that it's particularly balanced. But the thing that I really love about our communities and being there, because I'm traveling all the time to our communities and I speak at a lot of conferences and meet a lot of people who live in other communities, right? I mean, like we're not the only game in town. In fact, we're just one of many games in town. But what's really cool is when you get in with other expats or other international investors, you really get this spirit of adventure, this spirit of freedom, and the conversations that I get to have at events or in our communities are conversations that I would never have, across the street here or down in town or almost anywhere else. And it really it's refreshing. I'll just say that it's absolutely refreshing.
My next question, I think, probably is answered within the answer you just gave. I'm going to ask it anyway. If things were to fall apart in the U.S., multiple secessions and red blue line breakups, do you foresee that it would be more likely you would have a rush of conservatives or a rush of progressives?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, our company is 29 years old, so we've been doing this for almost 3 decades, right? And if you divide 30 by 4, what's that? 8, something like that. Anyway, so we've been through 8 presidential elections, right? Or more or less 7, whatever, 7 presidential elections. And so what we've seen is that when a Republican gets in, there are more Democrats that are looking to expat. When a Democrat gets in, there are more Republicans that want to expat, right? And so that has done this. And so I think the answer to your question is it depends on how it's driven, right? If it's a Republican conservative driven event, I think we'd probably see more liberal left people, wanting to expat. If it's the liberal left driven event, then I think we're going to see more conservatives. If it erupts into what I would call just sort of that civil war or some state of that, right, where it's both sides, then I think anybody who can get out, or who has thought about it will want to get out, and I don't think it'll be partisan, probably in any way, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's where I was thinking your previous answer is sort of like if things just dissipate. And I agree with you. We've talked about the pendulum on this program. Depending on who's in power, the pendulum just swings back and forth on who wants to get the heck out.
Right.
But if things were just to dissolve overall, I would think it would be those people that are less risk averse, that are more independent, and as you said, rugged individualists and adventure type personalities.
Yep.
Leading back into if things just sort of dissolve and you do have significant immigration of U.S. citizens into these other these expat type communities, do you think that the countries in which those communities exist would tighten things up to make it difficult so that you foresee Americans at the borders of these countries?
Absolutely. We've already seen it in Costa Rica. Costa Rica, it's going back a decade-ish, but, whatever, 10, 12 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, they tightened up their retirement program. They significantly raised the dollar amounts that people had to prove in order to qualify for residency. And Costa Rica was in a very fortunate position. It's a very popular destination for North Americans. It has been for 40, 50 years. And so, they kind of said, well, geez, we can slow it down a little bit and we can raise the price. And that's exactly what they did. And so yes, there's already a good example of that happening, and that's why, again, if you already have your residency, like if you follow the process to get your residency, then they change the law. Typically, here's the thing: they could retroactively revoke your green card, right? Your residency card, but these countries understand that like they're many are tied to the U.S. dollar for trade, especially, right? I mean, the U.S. is the single largest trading partner of every country in Central America, I mean, by far. There's not even a second runner-up in any case, right? And so the U.S. dollar and U.S. foreign investment, U.S. dollar flows are critically important for the health of these economies. And unlike the U.S., where we can just call up the Fed and say, hey, why don't you print a bunch more? These economies don't really have that luxury. Yeah, they have their own currencies, but if they start to do that, what happens is everybody in their country starts to go to dollars, right? And it's the gray market, right? But they just jump to the dollars immediately. So while they can play with it a little bit, they just don't have the vast range of mobility and maneuverability that the U.S. does on currency and printing. And so while I think that there is the chance that they would retroactively say, "Wow, Mike, you've got a residency card, but we're taking it back." It would upset the apple cart in so many ways. And that's the other thing. I mean, if you look at, very rarely does a country actually expropriate anything owned by the U.S., right? I mean, Venezuela is the one example where they did. And you look at Venezuela, I mean, it's a downward spiral going, drilling a hole to the middle of the earth, right? I mean, anybody that could get out has gotten out. Anybody that's still there is trying to figure out how to get out, right? Mm-hmm. And so, that's a quote good, not good, but it's a powerful example of what happens when you expropriate anything owned by U.S., Canadian, foreign investors, generally foreign investors. And so these countries, want us as people. I even in a place like Nicaragua, where you've got President Ortega, who is a strongman politician, and he will probably be the president of the country until he dies. I mean, and I know that upsets people, like, oh, he's a dictator. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know. But the point is that his statement is I think rings true throughout the region. We love Americans. We don't necessarily like U.S. government policy, right? And they're able to clearly make that distinction, especially on policy matters, right? Where they might vote against the U.S. and the UN, which Nicaragua does all the time, right? But yet they welcome U.S. foreign investment. We as a company are treated so well in Nicaragua. We as a family, as individuals, were treated so well. People didn't even know who I was or who my wife was. I mean, we were treated so well as individuals, Americans living in Nicaragua. And so, again, we were part of the Rotary Club. We had lots of things going on. We were engaged in the community. We had legal residency, all the things that kind of, check those boxes, right? But I think that the governments, if there's a large inflow of people, yes, they're going to change the terms and conditions. Yes, they're going to try to slow it down. Yes, they might even say stop, right? I don't think they'll retroactively change anything. And that's why, the old adage, when do you want to put up the plywood? When the hurricane winds are blowing 100 miles an hour, or the day before when you know it's going to blow 100 miles an hour tomorrow, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think getting permanent residency somewhere else is like putting the plywood over the windows, right? Or the storm shutters, whatever it is. You do it when the sun's shining, because we don't know. Like, if all of a sudden stuff hits the fan and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of Americans, 1% of America's 3.5 million people. 1%, if 1% of Americans said, I got to get out of here, right? That's 3.5 million people. And I mean, like in any country of Central America, like any part of that number is monstrous as a percentage. I mean, Panama has 4 million people. Costa Rica has 5 million people. Nicaragua has 6 million people. Belize has 450,000 people, right? So, I mean, if 10,000 people showed up in Belize, that would be like a meaningful percentage, right? So, yes, I think these countries will probably try to put the brakes on when and if it needs to happen. You just want to be in ahead of it. You just want to be legally in ahead of it, and then probably don't have anything to worry about.
When you talk about taking things back, expropriation, I'm assuming that the countries you're involved in have good property rights and good land title
Yes.
protections. Are there any that stand out as the supreme example of that?
You ready?
Yeah.
Nicaragua.
Really?
Nicaragua.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, people just they just can't believe what I say. It's the old adage, don't confuse me with the facts, right? Because I want to believe that Nicaragua is this dangerous country. I mean, but you know what? Property rights, in the Constitution, they treat foreign and domestic property rights equally. Belize is another great one, by the way. It's the same. In fact, the nice thing about Belize is it's English common law, so it's easy to understand. It makes sense to us, but rule of law, fee simple title, Nicaragua, escritura publica, public title, right? And so, you've got great, Costa Rica the same, Panama the same. So all four of these countries really do a tremendous job. The one thing I would say, by the way, can I mention my book real quick? Just
Please do.
Yes, because back here towards the back of my book, not sure exactly where off the top of my head, but somewhere in, Citizens Residency, I have a whole chapter on residencies and visas and things like that. But I've got a chapter back here somewhere, it's in there, that talks about property title types. And this
let's see the cover of your book while you're at it, Michael.
Oh yeah, sorry. How to buy your home overseas and get it right the first time. Okay, it's on Amazon, bestseller on Amazon. It's doing well. Lots of folks getting caught. 99 cents. I don't make any money from it. I just want people to get the book, because this book really, and there's nothing salesy in it. This has 30 questions that we should ask when we buy property overseas. It talks about how to transition to life overseas, culture shock. It has stuff about visas and residencies, and then it has a whole chapter, or I think it's a section, but on property titles. And this goes to your question, Rick, which is so important. Many of these countries have what I'm going to call imperfect title, right, or non-title. So, for example, Panama has something called rights of possession, right? And what you'll hear people say, real estate agents, not realtors, but real estate agents, or the guy with the business card that says he's a real estate agent. That's a whole different thing. Anyway, but rights of possession title. You'll hear those words. ROP title, rights of possession title. But those two words don't go together. Rights of possession is not title. Rights of possession is simply a right to occupy the property. There's no title there. But they'll throw that word out, and if you don't know any better, you're like, oh, it's ROP title, right? Oh, okay, yeah, I'll do it, and blah, blah, blah. And then you end up owning a piece of property that you can never own because there's no title to it. It's never been titled, right? Cooperativa land that was given up in cooperatives. And Nicaragua has cooperativa land. And a lot of times it's been taken out of the cooperativa and turned into title. Sometimes it's legit and sometimes it's not, right? So again, what we want to do, and what I talk about in the book, is you need to have an attorney that's your attorney. And I would say if you're buying a property that's over $50,000, you hire a second attorney to check the work of the first attorney. And if the property's over $250,000, you actually hire a third attorney to check the work of both attorneys. And by the way, the second attorney should be a very local attorney. Like, you can hire a big city attorney to do your title work, and that's great, right? They understand it, they know the process and the system. But if it's over 50,000 or certainly over 100,000, I would get a second lawyer in the little tiny town, wherever that property, the municipality where that property is, to then look at it. Because what they'll know is, oh, no, that land was actually sold to so-and-so's uncle, and they had a court case, and he sued because he was cheating on his wife, and whatever it is, right? Which the big city attorney might never know, and it's not in the public record anywhere. but it might have a claim against it or something, right? And so that very, very local attorney can suss those things out, whereas the big ones can't. And for a big property, we always, for we're doing big properties. In fact, we have a 1,600 acre property in southern Belize right now on the mainland that we're in the process of acquiring, which, by the way, would be a great place for folks to look at as a bug out destination, because they're 2.5 and 5 acre properties. That are beautiful farm properties. So this is something that we're actively pursuing in Belize right now. But we have a third attorney doing sort of the transactional background on it, because again, when you're investing that much, look, in the U.S. you've got title insurance, and the title system in the U.S. has been banged around for 150 years. Like, there's almost no such thing as bad title in the U.S. anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Almost. I mean, that's why title insurance is such a great business. They're charging money for almost no risk, right? Overseas, that's not the case, because these countries are newer. The title systems are newer, right? And so you still got issues that are getting worked out. So having that second attorney, critically important. And if the transaction's large enough, a third attorney to look at the work of the other two, especially in civil law. Civil law is very, very different. Civil law is very procedural. And just to give you one example, if your passport number is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, right, and instead you put 2 1 3 4 5 6 7, you inverse the 1 and the 2, like, it wouldn't necessarily negate a contract in civil law, but it would certainly be a point that somebody could grab a hold of to negate a contract, which is crazy, because we obviously all know it's my name, but it's nope, it says 2 1, not 1 2, right? And so civil law is that kind of procedural. And so having that second attorney, but also even more important, that third attorney, to look for just the dumb little things like typos, where, like, you would think in a common law, the spirit of the law, come on. And no judge would rule against that. But in civil law, there is no spirit of the law. It's written, documented, factual. So it's a very different thing. So anyway, those are, again, some things that North Americans might never even think to do or ask, because why would we, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where in roughly, by what town in South Belize? Is it Punta Gorda, Placencia? Where are you looking at?
The town is Independence. Yeah, directly behind the Placencia Peninsula. Yeah. It's a beautiful 1,600 acres, about 1,000 of it's incredibly great farmland, and that's where we're going to break it up into some 2.5 and 5 acre. We're calling them farmsteads, basically, if folks, it's a perfect plan B, because your property taxes are almost de minimis. There'll be no HOA rules. I think we'll have a very simple road maintenance fee of maybe $30 a month or something. So call it whatever, $200 a year to maintain the road. But again, very low property taxes. So you have it. You could let somebody else farm it, which would be wonderful. Get somebody there, let a farmer come in and farm it. And if you ever needed to move there, wanted to move there, you could. And the Mennonites built a wonderful little house for $50,000-$75,000. So you plunk that house down on it, and now all of a sudden for $125,000, you've got a 2.5 acre property with a little house on it, and you've actually got a place to live. The other thing we're going to do, Rick, is for the first time ever, really, in our history of our company, we're going to put together a very small amount of money down with I think maybe a 10-year payment plan to really get those to look as a plan B, right? It'll just be one of those things that you have it, you can come use it, you can put a house on it or not, but make it very, very affordable for folks who just want to have that peace of mind of knowing they have a place outside the U.S. in a country like Belize, English speaking, common law, right? Just sort of checks a lot of boxes that would be a great plan B for them. So we're not ready to roll it out yet. We have not made the acquisition, but assuming it goes through in the next few weeks, by Q1 of next year, 2026, we'll have that product in the marketplace. So yeah, it's coming.
I'll keep my eyes open. I know it's an area where there's a lot of really quaint Mayan villages. So, and I'm sure you'd find a lot of Mayan farmers that would love to have an extra acre to do a little farming.
at 2.5 acres,
Two
right?
and a half acres, yeah.
2.5 acres, right? And now it's worth their while,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you get in their car, they come over, they do what they got to do, but they got 2.5 acres. That's a hectare basically, right? And
Yep.
so, right, they got their hectare to put some cattle on or do whatever. So yes, it makes it very, very efficient for you to find somebody that wants to do that. Yep. Yeah.
Let's step back. When the more things are simmering and coming to a boil, the more interest there is in a plan B and a bug out plan and getting serious about this. And as you've said, perhaps not waiting until we are at a boil is smarter, like putting shutters, hurricane shutters on your house.
Yep.
Do you see a policy, a U.S. policy that could be put in place that really takes the temperature down, something that I would call truly federalizes or gives state sovereignty? Do you see anything possible that would just wipe out this? I don't want to say business model, because you don't need to, for your business model, you need to
Yeah.
have plan B.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful investment either way. But for those that would be doing it specifically for plan B, do you see some sort of U.S. policy that would take away that impetus?
Look, yeah, sure. I mean, you talk about federalism, right? If all of a sudden we started to give states the real power to control their destiny, I think we'd see states like, probably Texas, although it's turning purple at the moment, so who knows? But South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, maybe New Hampshire, right? I mean, I think wasn't that the Free State? The one that the Free
Yep.
State Project was New Hampshire,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So right, so I mean, I think there are states out there that might really they're already kind of leaning in that direction. If all of a sudden they could really have some higher levels of self-determination for the state and for the citizens of that state, yes, I think that could happen. I mean, they'd be in a good position. They're already leaning in. They could start running, right? So I think yes. I'm not. I hate to be pessimistic because I'm usually very optimistic, but don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell of that happening. But anyway,
Yeah.
but who knows? I hope so. Actually, I hope so. And what would be great, Rick, is that if that piece of my business model gets the big X across it, like as a U.S. citizen, as an individual who loves his country and wants to continue to live here and be here, I would love that to happen, even though it would put a dink in some of my business model. We've been serving folks that want to live overseas. The weather is a big deal, and cost of living, right? If you want the tropical weather, right, you got to go to Florida, Texas, whatever, some places like that. But almost anywhere in Florida, Texas, the cost of living is 2, 3, 4 times what it is in a country like Belize, for example. And it depends on where in Texas and where in Belize, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Belize is far less expensive, no matter how you slice it, than anywhere in the U.S. And so if you want the tropical weather, the warmer weather, and you want a significantly lower cost of living, the Americas, Central Americas, offers that. And that's really always been the biggest part of our business, because the truth is, Plan Bers don't move. Plan Bers might buy a property, they might use it, a few weeks a year, rent it out when they're not there, right? But that doesn't really create community per se, right? It's the people who are coming, either retirees or digital nomads, who are coming and living there. And some are snowbirds. They live there 6 months out of the year. They go back to colder weather, in the summer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But nice weather. Minnesota's nice in the summer. Canada's nice in the summer, right? So they snowbird. But the people who are 6 months or more to full time, they create the nucleus of a community. And that's actually the biggest part of our business and has been for 29 years. I don't see that changing. I think that's still going to continue to be the biggest piece of our business. Plan B might be, 20%, making up a number, but it's probably not a quarter.
Right.
So somewhere in that range.
Can you just tell our,
Yeah.
our viewers what digital nomad is? I would think that would be probably the greatest, most rapidly increasing segment of your interest.
Boom. I
Yeah.
mean, boom. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. A digital nomad is someone who is now free to work from home, right? Because they're a knowledge worker of some point. And in fact, I give whole presentations on this topic, Rick, and I start it with, for the first time in human history. And that's a huge statement, right? I mean, that's a big statement. For the first time in human history, work and the location of work have been decoupled for many people. Like, I mean, going all the way back to caveman, right? They'd go kill the bear to eat it, right? And then you put fences around the animals and planted the plants in rows to make it easier, right? But you still had to be there. Industrial revolution, people had to go work the machines in the factory, right? And so, like, you had this big evolution, revolutions. They called them revolutions: agricultural revolution, industrial revolution, and then you had the post-industrial revolution, right? They're calling this thing a revolution, and I think it really is a revolution in that sense, right? So post-industrial revolution came along, but people still got in their cars, sat in traffic for an hour or two each way every day to go do this or do this,
Yep.
right? And what changed it was COVID.
Yep.
When the government said, stay home, all of a sudden the management structures that had been industrial, right? Frederick Winslow Taylor came along and helped design the management system for Ford, right? To make his factories more efficient, right? But that management structure carried forward even when we had the technology to be something very different. COVID broke it. And so now all of a sudden we have all these people, millions and millions and millions of people, all the way from the baby boomers to the Gen Zers, right? I mean, the whole demographic. And it probably, if you had to do a bell curve, it probably bubbles in that sort of that millennial, maybe Gen Y kind of, generation, right? And they can't really afford to buy real estate yet, but they can afford to live overseas. But here's where our market has really gotten exciting, Rick, is it's the people in their 50s and 60s who said to themselves, gosh, I can't wait until I retire because I want to move to Belize because I love to fly fish or dive. I want to move to, Nicaragua because I love to surf, or Costa Rica because I love to hike in the cloud forest, or whatever it is. And they always said, I got to wait till I retire. I can't wait till I retire. Mm-hmm. Many of these people don't have to wait. They can move right now, and they are moving. And that's the demographic that we've seen in our business that is just doing this incredibly. And so people who can work from home can make home someplace awesome, right? You got to have good internet. You got to have reliable electric. We talked about at the very beginning, right? So you got to have reliable electric and reliable internet. But if you have those two things, and those are the hallmarks of the communities we build. I mean, we put fiber to the home in 2004 at Grand Pacifica, right? We were the first fiber to the home network in all of Central America. So we already understood the need for that telecommunications aspect, and now it's even more important, and we're just way ahead of the game on that, which is good. It allows people to come work from home and let home be someplace really, really cool,
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's key. All right, Michael, we're coming to the end here. I always do a rapid fire at the end, so I'm going to ask you a few questions. I'm going to ask for maybe 1 or 2 sentence answers, 30 seconds or less. Are you ready?
Yep.
The most overrated Plan B destination today?
Costa Rica.
I'm going to kind of a side question here. I hear the Plan B type people talking a lot about Uruguay, and I don't think you're involved there, but do you have a thumbs up, thumbs down on Uruguay? Anything?
I like Uruguay. I think Uruguay has a lot of very positive attributes. It's been a financial services center for Argentina and Brazil for a number of years. The infrastructure is good. I like Uruguay personally.
Okay.
Yep.
One legal landmine Americans overlook frequently when buying property abroad.
Title. Getting the title issue wrong because they make the assumption it's the same as the U.S.
Okay, which would be wiser for Americans to choose, a second home or a second passport?
Second home with a residency. Clarify, home and residency.
Yep. Okay. What would be the first asset that you would move offshore if you that you'd recommend?
My Bitcoin.
So do you think? Well, tell me, what does that mean? Because if it's in, let's say you have it in a hard wallet, say Ledger, is there something that is there something more to know? I'm not an expert.
No. It's just, look, gold, how do you carry it? Silver,
Okay.
forget about it. I mean, land, you can't move it, right?
Okay.
So you
I
can't, I mean,
understand.
right.
So you're saying you don't need to move the Bitcoin, get into Bitcoin because you don't need to move it.
Well, right. But if you want to move it, carry it out in the little memory stick. I mean, adios, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
What is an idealistic time frame to make a decision for moving to or being involved in an expat community and actually having it happen? Realistic time frame.
Yeah, sure. We talk with our property consultants that the average close cycle for an expat property, right, is 6 months to 6 years. Normal time, 2, 3, 4 years, bell curves, right? And so we work with people for 2, 3, 4 years, most people, before they transact. Some people are really ready when they hit us in 6 months and they've transacted, right? Some people are 6 years, some people are 10, 12 years. But the one thing I would say is, if you're making an investment's a head decision, do your research, do your due diligence, and then transact, right? You don't have to see if you like it or not. It's when you are making an investment, it's not about what you like, it's about what the clients like. And so find a property that makes sense from an intellectual, numbers, logical standpoint, and transact. That can happen in 30, 60, 90 days, right? But if you are transacting to live there, as it's going to be your community, my advice is, and I know this is longer than 2 sentences, but this is so important, Rick. You should look at 3 to 5 places, and you should spend about 3 to 5 days in each one of them. And the best thing possible is to do it in a series. Like I got 5 countries I want to visit for 3 days each. Take 15, 18 days and spend 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. At the end of that trip, 2 or 3 of them, you're going to go, nah. Mm-hmm. 2 of them, you're going to go, maybe. Then go back and rent a home in each of those places for 90 days to 6 months before you buy. Rent here for 90 days, rent here for 90 days. One of those places is going to feel like home. You'll make friends. You'll love the little restaurant down the street. Like it'll just click, right? Then transact. So again, long answer to a short question, but that's in my book. That process is in my book, and I talk a lot about that, because the worst thing that can happen is you overreact and transact too quickly on a lifestyle product. You find out that, can I just tell one quick story?
Please do.
Carol and Dan moved. They wanted to move overseas. I'd seen them at conferences for about a decade. I saw them for 8 to 10 years at conferences, right? This country, that country, this Panama, Colombia, Belize, Nicaragua, maybe even one in Spain or something. I don't remember. I saw them all over the place over 8 to 10 years. They loved Colombia. They decided on Colombia. So they got the country right. They loved Medellin. They got Medellin right. They bought an apartment in, I think it was Poblado, one of the neighborhoods in Medellin, right? And they found church was a very important thing for them, English, because they didn't speak Spanish. So they found an English-speaking church in a neighborhood that on Sunday was 20-minute drive. Okay, no big deal. Get in your car, 20 minutes, go to church, right? Every other day of the week, it was an hour and a half horrible traffic drive. And so what happened is that their friends that all spoke English that went to the church, their friend group, all lived an hour and a half away most days of the week except for Sunday. Had they simply rented for 90 days, found that English-speaking church, they would have bought something in Envigado, right? And been near their friends. And so that's why renting is so important if it's a lifestyle decision, because you'll find out where your friend group is, then you can buy there. So anyway, that's in the book, and it doesn't answer your question quickly, because I don't think there's a quick answer to that question, by the way. But anyway.
It's a great answer and very wise. I think that I believe, and from my perspective, it occurred personally as well. Once you make the decision that you want to do this, it's very exciting, and you just want to go. And I mean,
yeah.
And fortunately, my wife was able to pull the reins. But once I'm like, yeah, let's look for property. I'm like, oh, I want that. That's amazing. It's amazing. And then and I want that. It's like.
Yeah,
so
it's human nature, right?
Yeah. It's best to have a little patience and be thoughtful and intentional about it, as you've described. I think that is a brilliant move. All right, Michael, I think This has been great. Very
It has been,
informative.
Rick.
I look forward to talking to you again in the future, perhaps another conference, who knows, maybe down in Belize.
Well,
And if you
both.
could, if you could give our viewers again your book and perhaps where they can find you or ECI.
Yep. Sure. So the book on Amazon, How to Buy Your Home Overseas and Get It Right the First Time, Michael K. Cobb, but How to Buy Your Home Overseas. And best way to get a hold of me is simply info@ecidevelopment.com, and just put something like, Rick's podcast in the subject line. That'll find its way to me, and I will respond to every inquiry personally and directly. So I believe in the personal connection. Rick, thanks for having me on. I really want to say again, you do a tremendous service to your viewers and listeners. This is the kind of information, not just my podcast, but the other ones that you're doing that really matter. So thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Michael. All right. Great to have you. We'll see you soon.
Bye now.